Thank you so much for tuning in to Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation with the Shelby County Democratic Party. And today is a special day because we have another former chairman of the Democratic Party who actually came in at a time where the party had experienced some significant distress and was seeking to rebound and cement a new foundation for the work that was to be done in Shelby County. And even making this matter even more special, I first became active with the Shelby County Democratic Party under the leadership of our guest today. And so I want to introduce to you all our guest today. His name is Mr. Corey Strong, and he is a candidate running for U.S. Congress, the District 90. He's running to be the United States representative for District 9. I'm sorry, I had a dyslexic moment right there. But for District 9. So, Corey Strong, welcome to Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation.
How you doing, brother? Thank you so much, Chairman, for this opportunity and highlight the work that you also did when you were in the party, and I appreciate you. You were tapped you to do community outreach, and you did a phenomenal job at it, and I appreciate you for that and for this platform. So thanks.
Well, I'm glad that you're on the show, and of course, this is Coffee, Candidates, and Conversation, and I've got my SCDP coffee.
Those look familiar. So I'm gonna shout out. So I got this as a gift. Says Commander Strong on it. It's this is the crest of my last reserve unit, Coastal Riverine Squadron 1. They just got back from a deployment in Africa recently, and so this is for my time serving with them in the reserves. And so, you know, shout out. So Commander Strong here today.
Nice, yeah. And so, man, let's just sort of dive into it. So everybody wants to know, who is Corey Strong? And so, you know, we all know you're a candidate and you're grinding, trying to help people get a better understanding of who you are and what your positions are on the critical issues that matter. So let's help the people do a little more learning who you are. So first question, tell us something about Corey Strong that we can't learn on Google, that we can't learn by going to your campaign website, and that we can't learn by working with you in your professional capacity.
So I know you won't know this from my website. I know you won't know it from my professional. If you are good at Google, you might be able to figure this out. But in college, I went to the Naval Academy, but I was a cheerleader in college. And so I was the captain of the cheerleading squad. I was an NCAA All-Star back in the day. And so you might not know that. I also cheer for the Baltimore Ravens for half a season there. So as a professional cheerleader, so I ain't just do it, you know, part-time. I was doing it really. But the reason I mentioned Google, you might be able to find this out, is I am known kind of outside of Memphis, but really around the world for a cheer that my classmate came up with. Mm-hmm. And he taught me that we did the Naval Academy, and the cheer is, "I believe that we will win." So if you heard someone say, you know, "I believe that we will," like that cheer, that is me and my classmate Jay Rodriguez at the Naval Academy. And so we made that famous. He started at the prep school. I made it famous at the Naval Academy. And now it's attached to Major League Soccer and different colleges, and you know, and so yeah. And I think you know, being a cheerleader, you know, you're at a military school and it's very austere, and it's like, you know, salute and serve the country, and that stuff is great. But you know, I got to have something to lighten it up a little bit, and also you want to, you know, kind of internal optimism is something that I would attach myself, and I think that cheer represents, and just my willingness to root kind of other people on and support them. Is something I've always done, and proud to be associated with that. And I'm cool with being a cheerleader. You know, my dad was like, at first he was like, "I don't know about this cheerleading thing, Corey," but then he saw me out on the field. He was like, "You get to travel with the football team, and then you get to stay overnight. Okay, that's probably a pretty good deal. I'll let you get away with it." So yeah, so I enjoyed my time being a cheerleader in college.
Yeah, I imagine you have to be pretty strong to, you know, hold up a whole person,
man,
you know, with one arm and all of that. So I
still got back problems today. So shoot, yeah. So yeah, but still, a lot of athleticism, and where the sport has gone now, it's incredible. The athletes they have, there's like Netflix shows about and stuff like that. It's incredible. So So definitely just have fun, root on my team, and I've always, continue to root on the Naval Academy everywhere I can. So unfortunately, when they come play the Memphis Tigers, I'm rooting for Navy. So I gotta rep my team and my school. But yeah, definitely.
Well, man, at least you're honest about it. At least you're honest about it. Y'all heard that, voters. He's rooting for the Navy when they come play the Tigers.
Anybody else, I'm with the Tigers anywhere else. But when Navy come to town, I gotta rep my team.
I understand. Well, let's continue to open that door so that people can know more about who Corey Strong is. We know that typically when you're running for office, your life sort of becomes the sum of all of the issues that are most important to your constituents. And sometimes we forget that candidates too are also voters. So let's take your candidate's hat off for a moment and just set that to the side.
Okay.
Let's talk as a voter. For Corey Strong, the voter, what is the single most important issue to you and why?
So I think the most important issue to me as a voter, I think the term that comes up is all politics are local. And what's most important to me is having elected officials that truly understand the area we live in, are doing everything they can in elected office, representing people to make that place the best version of itself, the most authentic version of itself, right? And I would say that there are, some young elected officials, some older ones, but definitely some younger elected officials that are starting to understand that and fight in those offices to really help Memphis kind of reach the best version of itself. When I look at me and my own personal, you talked about me as a voter. I came back home from, half of a career military service about 9 years ago. And I know a lot of my peers who are very successful, got great degrees and do great things, are not living in Memphis. And it's a constant conversation when you get around Memphis people in another place about how Memphis has never really kind of become what it can be. And a lot of people don't want to move home because of that, because it doesn't have the same attractions, the same accoutrement, the same, activity that Atlanta or DC or Chicago or New York or wherever else they live has, right? And so my goal is I see Memphis as being better than all those places because of the people. But we haven't caught up to the people because we don't necessarily value the people. So in my regard, I want to see elected officials who sincerely believe in what's possible. And it's hard when you get into politics because people talk about the negative a lot, crime and poverty, et cetera, et cetera. But the only thing that's more powerful than fear is hope. And so those elected officials that speak to hope of what's possible and want to work towards that, that's what's important to me. And we're starting to have some elected officials talk to those issues. But that's what's important to me.
Okay. Well, you kind of touched on something that I think a lot of people would like to hear about. We know that you're a veteran, and we understand in America historically that veterans haven't always got quite a fair shake after giving your time full time, especially to serve your country, and whether you've been deployed and away from your family for a significant amount of time or experienced some traumatic stuff on the battlefield. My dad was in the military, nearly 22 years, and my mother served 12 years. And I know from experience that, it can have a lasting impact on you when you return home and you're trying to adjust to a civilian life. And so tell us about, some of your thoughts on issues affecting veterans like healthcare and opportunities to find work and transferability of skills and job creation in that regard.
So what I would say is, just as a general matter, historically, you're right. This country has had a poor history at repaying those who have given the ultimate sacrifice, those individuals, their families, and loved ones who paid the ultimate sacrifice, whether it's their life or their body and limb for this country, of repaying them and making sure when they came back, they got what they deserve. And what they deserve is more than 10% off at a restaurant or at Lowe's or Home Depot. They deserve far more than, a day at a sporting event where you salute veterans. They deserve a country that makes them whole. When you've used them as an instrument of our national policy, they deserve to be made whole afterwards. And I think we've done a good job of that. And there's a number of different venues for that. racially, right? This has come up a lot when we talk about the kneeling at the football games. My grandfather served in World War II, and he came back. There was no GI Bill for him. There were no loans for his farm. He did not access to those things. I think if our country actually repaid him as a veteran what he did for our country, what would our family look like? What would we have been able to build up and support? Um, and if you look at subsequent wars, not just along racial lines, but on the healthcare lines, Agent Orange in Vietnam, some of the nerve gases and things where people are exposed to in Desert Storm, burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan during this current war on terrorism. And so people are coming back with physiological issues, health issues, mental health issues, and not to separate those two because they have to be treated the same way, right? And we have not done a good job of doing it. What's particularly concerning is here at the VA in Memphis. It is known as one of the worst in the country, and it continues to still have issues with providing health care to veterans. A lot of people don't know Shelby County has the largest number of veterans in the state of Tennessee. Of any county in the state of Tennessee, Shelby County has the most veterans. In addition to that, the VA hospital here serves eastern Arkansas, western Tennessee, and northern Mississippi, right? And so all of these areas, veterans use this as the VA hospital. And the number of veterans I've talked to on the campaign trail that say they don't even use that benefit because it's not of any value to them is really, really disturbing, right? And so I think it is super important that when we support the military, it is not just defense contractors, right? And I think what a lot of people on the other side of the aisle will tell you is when they support the military, they're talking about Boeing and Lockheed Martin and planes and ships. And yeah, we need the right tools to be able to defend our country and to protect others. But when I talk about the military, I'm talking about the people that put the uniform I put on. And so we need to take care of them there, make sure they're paid properly, make sure that while they're in the military, they have the right exposure and the right access to physical health and mental health services, particularly when they've served overseas. In addition to that, when they come home as veterans, those need to be available to them. And finally, and I think this is super important, we need to ensure that we are not using our military for things that it's not trained to do, right? And so when it's time to do nation building, the Department of State needs to do that, not the military. And we've been at war for now 20 years, and we're doing a lot of nation building things, and that's not what the military is for. And they need to use the Department of State to do those things, as opposed to continuing to keep these sailors, Marines, soldiers, and airmen on this cycle of on and on and on deployments that are crushing their families. The last thing I'll say about this is, I remember the first time I was in Afghanistan, I talked to an E5 in the Army. I was working with the Army. And I asked him, he showed me a picture of his wife and his kid, and they were talking on Skype. And I said, hey, pretty cool. And he was like, yeah, it's kind of sad. And I was like, why is it sad, sir? He's like, well, I missed another one of his birthdays. And I was like, explain that to me. And he said he'd been married for 5 years, and he'd been with his wife for 18 months of that 5 years. The rest of it, he had been deployed. Like, that's the type of things that we're doing by sending people over and over again. And so there's a human toll when we declare war, and it can't just be about equipment and bombs and bullets. It's got to be about people. And so when I focus on veterans, I'm focused on veterans, people that did the same job I did. And we need to protect them and repay the debt and make them whole once they come back from overseas.
Okay. Just pause for a quick second. I'll cut this part out. You ready to go back in?
Yep.
Okay. So now you kind of mentioned some stuff that I thought would make like a really great question to connect, like 3 different segments of society together. You talked about your granddad, who is a veteran, who when he came home, had he been given an opportunity or at least access to some resources, commensurate in value with the level of sacrifice you have to give to serve your country, that, who knows where you would be today, right?
Right.
Then you also kind of just talked about those who are going to the military and just sort of coming out, trying to create opportunity for themselves and some difficulty there. So let's just deal with, these 3 groups that we have in America. So we've got our group that's in retirement age. Social Security is a concern. I actually had a voter to call me today and wanted to know what candidate is out there, which candidate is really big on Social Security, because that's what I care about.
Right,
So
right.
let's talk about Social Security. let's talk about what's important to folks who just finished college and are now knocking on the world's door saying, okay, it's my time. Where's my opportunity? And then what about those who are on the way? Education. So let's take them in that. Let's sort of take them in that order, or whichever order you prefer. We got retirement and Social Security. We've got jobs, and we've got education. How would you slice that pie?
So, okay, just everybody. So talk about everything, Corey.
Yeah, pretty much.
No, no, I think it's a good question because I think also this Democratic nomination process has demonstrated there is a difference, a very big difference in how those groups of people view the world, and even the ones that aren't voters, what's important for them, and then how we approach them. And so, and actually, I just got a phone call from my mom's friend that would be in the Social Security age group. I think it's important we protect Social Security. People have paid into that; they're depending on that. Regardless of what the Republican lie is, it is a solvent program. It pays for itself. When Republicans borrow from it to give tax breaks to rich people, that's when it has issues. And so it is important for us to continue to protect that, continue to pay money into that, and continue to support that. And also to make sure, I support an expansion of Medicare for that purpose, to make sure that group of people is cared for, older people in our society. And that's a large group. When we're talking about baby boomers, it's going to be a large group. And that's going to fundamentally change our economy when the responsibility is to care for those people. And they need to have something to protect and take care of them. But look at those people that are in the workforce. We, at one point during the New Deal in this country, particularly after the war, when the baby boomers were in that working class world or coming into the world, we as a country made a pact with our citizenry to create a middle class, to expand, to invest in a middle class. And I think that it is important that America does that again, not only as a way to ensure that families that people can provide for their families, and that there's opportunities in the American dream, but also as a way to make America competitive, right? And so it is those entrepreneurs and those people that are creating new ideas and new companies and new technologies. It is investing in the middle class and giving people the peace of mind and the financial wherewithal and financial really freedom and liberty to be able to pursue those dreams that'll make us competitive with China and whomever else comes up on the world stage, right? But if we're not investing in people and their ideas, then we'll never get the ideas that will continue to make us competitive in the world. And that you have to invest in it. It just doesn't happen, right? It happens when you invest in it. I think when you think about education, again, that is a result of investing in that jobs. And so my platform is really focused on jobs, not only in the 9th District, but across this country. Because at the end of the day, if you look at the 9th District, a problem with our kids with reading is we have this economy of poverty in Memphis where we benefit off of people barely having enough money to know how poor they are, right? Mm-hmm. And so people have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to provide for their kids. Well, if I'm working 2 or 3 jobs, I can't be at home to read to my kids and make sure they get their schoolwork done, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm out of the house. And in a lot of situations, both parents are out of the house. And that was not the case for me growing up. My parents worked hard, but they were in the house when we needed them to take care of us, right? And so if education is going to work, we have to ensure that the people that are supporting the kids as they're being educated have what they need to provide them with resources. Children don't have access to broadband. Children don't have access to food because of food deserts. Children don't have access to utilities because we have bankruptcy and poverty. All of these things compound where 40% of our kids live in poverty. The problem is the kids are living in poverty. The parents are poor. Like, be clear, like the parents are the ones making money. And so we talk about the 40% of kids in Shelby County living in poverty. That means their parents are poor. And so I don't change it by waiting for those kids to graduate and get a job. I change it by changing the situation their parents are in so that they have a fighting chance to be able to do this. And I don't want to pay if I had my druthers, I would not want a nonprofit raising money to read to my kids. I would want the people donating to that nonprofit to pay their workers more so they can be home to read to their own kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's got to be a different approach to where we are investing in a middle class, and in Memphis, unapologetically a Black middle class, right? Where, my district in Memphis are, 66% Black. We need to create that. If the children and the progeny and our future is going to be strong, we have to invest in their parents to make sure they have what they need to get a good education.
Mm-hmm. And I think, arguably perhaps one of the biggest investments you can make in the middle class begins, in pre-K learning. And so let's talk about what we've been hearing in the news with our Secretary of Education and Donald Trump talking, or at least making the threat that schools who go fully virtual in response to COVID-19 stand at the risk to lose federal dollars because of that. What is your response to that? And do you think that schools should be, going all virtual based on your assessment of what's happening in the country with coronavirus?
First of all, short answer, yes, schools need to go virtual until we get our hands around it. It is a travesty that that woman is the Secretary of Education. I mean, it's an absolute travesty. And the damage that she's doing to this, our educational system, is going to take some time to repair. So, of course, I'm against that, making threats to people to open up a school district for people to be at school. And the reality is many of the people in the base, in Trump's base, won't send their kids back to school while supporting the president and saying that other people have to go back to school. Like, that's a travesty. But I think it's ironic. I would invert the idea of defunding schools for going virtual. The fact that we've had to go virtual has identified some gaps in education that I think are important. And one of those gaps, particularly in 9th District, is access to broadband. Children do not have access to broadband. What I would do is actually invert that, right? We need actual more funding to ensure that our kids have access to the equipment and technology required, not just for virtual, but for normal standard education. And so one of the things I would present is in piece of legislation is expansion of Title I dollars. Title I is the federal funding that used to address kind of gaps in education, right? Opportunity gaps, things like that. And so one of them is broadband access. Why not put a large amount of federal money into making sure that at least those around school buildings, the neighborhoods around school buildings, have access to broadband through their school buildings, and that Title I funds are used specifically for that. There'll be a tremendous a lift financially, but I think it would definitely be worth it because that means our kids can consistently access education at school or away from school, and you relieve a financial burden on those who can't provide it, and kids still have an opportunity that their school's providing for them. And so we should actually be funding more due to the fact that we have to go virtual as opposed to less, and that's something I'll definitely be looking at presenting legislation for.
Okay. Well, man, let's sort of transition into a different mode. So what we'll do, we'll call this a mini slow lightning round. So you have about a minute to a minute and a half to respond to these. But what I'll do is I'm just going to pick a topic from the long list of things that we have as possible topics. And I just want you to tell us what your thought is about it. If there's a big problem, address it. If there is, well, there's always a big problem. So let me say, if there's something significant that you would like to bring out, address that. And if we step on a big toe and we need to spend some more time on an issue, let's dig into the issue. So you let me know if you step on a big toe issue. And so we'll start out with this one. And this is definitely a painful one in Tennessee. What are your thoughts on the expansion of Medicare and Medicaid? And, Tennessee, we've not accepted those dollars.
Tennessee's thrown billions of dollars away by not expanding Medicare. That needs to be done immediately, and it definitely would continue to support Democrats at the state level who want to start a campaign to try to convince other voters of the need to do that. We've closed too many hospitals. We have too many negative healthcare outcomes. But in addition, we need to change the Medicare system so that it is comprehensive. And so I'm for Medicare for all system, right? I don't think that that maybe it's not politically tenable right now. The most important thing is to get Mr. Trump out of the White House. But at some point in his first term, we can have a real conversation about that. And it's the same idea: access to Medicare. Healthcare is a human right, and so I would support that. If it came up on the floor, I'll be one of the first to support it. And so yeah, that has to happen. It is a sin that we are making money off of people's healthcare outcomes, and we can't continue to be that as a country and be a moral leader in this world.
And in the same healthcare realm, and go ahead and break out the scale. How would you rate the United States response to COVID-19 on a scale from 1 to 10, and why?
So 0. Can you go negative? Is there a negative number? Like, God, like I saw a chart today about the number of days, 99 days to get to 1 million cases, and it's taken like 15 days to go from 3 million to 4 million. Like, just each million case, it takes a shorter amount of times to get there. It's been atrocious. We have an egomaniac in the White House, and it's about him, and it's not about people. We don't listen to science, business rules, and at every level, local, state, and federal government how attached we are to business interests and how much business interests and those with money dictate what happens in this country. COVID has eliminated that, and we've put essential workers and too frequently Black people who are in those essential worker jobs and have disparate healthcare outcomes on the front line. And at some point, it's going to be pretty obvious we got to shut it down. And I think that day is coming sooner rather than later. Even the president, with his dropping polling numbers, which are the only thing he listens to, starting to understand the importance of that, wearing a mask. And the reality is we're probably going to have to shut down again as a country and restart to figure this out and do it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, let's talk about money in a different area. The Department of Defense budget. Should there be more money given? Should it be decreased? What are your thoughts?
No, I thank you for asking this question. And actually, this has come up. Some constituents have reached out to me on this recently. I'm going to talk about me and my opponent here. The congressman has a reputation for having a great voting record. Vote just came up here recently for decreasing the Department of Defense budget by 10%, and he voted against that. If you start looking at his campaign disclosures and where he's made money, he's made a significant amount of money investing in defense contractors. And so we know that most of the Department of Defense budget does not go to people, it goes to equipment. So of course he wouldn't want to reduce something that's going to reduce the amount of money that puts in his own pocket. And so if you're going to be progressive, you got to be progressive in all ways. And I am a person in the military who can tell you the Department of Defense can take a 10% haircut. They can be more efficient with what they currently have. These programs for building equipment like the F-35 and the new aircraft carrier get out of hand. And so I would be someone who served in uniform that would say, hey, even the branch that I continue to serve in needs to do a better job with how to use the money that they're given. And I would have voted for, as many other progressive politicians did, for reducing that defense budget. And I think that's a worthwhile conversation to have, because that money that doesn't go to the defense budget can go to places like healthcare or education or commerce or labor, places that we really need it, as opposed to buying another ship or an airplane.
Okay. And speaking of resources and how we use them, let's talk about those who lack resources. Let's talk about poverty in America.
Well, this is the capital of poverty. We're the capital of bankruptcy. We're one of the second most impoverished urban areas and congressional districts in the country. And poverty rules the day here. And so we have to be very intentional about getting people out of poverty. To be honest, poverty makes people who are not in poverty rich, right? So the business of poverty, someone is benefiting from that. And Memphis has promoted its low-wage economy for some period of time. And so I want to be a disruptive force as a congressman to start talking about different businesses. I was just out at a protest recently, and we were talking about $15 an hour, right? $15 an hour is a floor. In Tennessee, to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, guess how much you must make hourly to afford a 2-bedroom apartment? $17 an hour. So if you're an adult with a child, guess what? You cannot afford those things. And so we have to do something different. And the only way you do that is invest in people and invest in jobs and pay them meaningfully.
And so then if you had to pick a number today that you thought was achievable on the floor, if you could bring it up and push it through, and if you were in the position to try and drive and rally the support, what number do you think you could land on and possibly get it done to the extent you could? And then is that number a number that is close to what an actual livable wage would be?
No, thank you for that question. So I'm not going to recreate the wheel and change the momentum we currently have. $15 an hour has support from many local governments, from state governments, and I think the push is to make that happen at the federal level. I think that is appropriate currently. My push is we don't need to settle for an economy that is based off of $15 an hour jobs, right? And so in Memphis, if the minimum wage is $15 an hour, then we're going to try to create as many jobs at that level as possible. And so you cannot have an economy that is based off of the floor, right? And so what I want to do in the 9th district is say, all right, yeah, $15 is great. That's a great floor. But what is really a livable wage? And it's really more than that. We know that. I just mentioned $17 an hour to pay for 2 bedrooms. So what I am looking to do is work with our mayors, work with our chamber at the federal level, and to attract businesses that offer $20 an hour jobs, $30 an hour jobs, $40 an hour jobs, with skilled labor, so we can actually create a middle class. You will never create a middle class at $15 an hour. And so my goal is, how do I expand the middle class, and what is the wage required to do that? What kind of job training do we have to do that? What other conditions need to be set to attract businesses here? What federal grant programs can I invest in to improve our education system and our infrastructure, and our technology, so that companies will want to come here? And how do I groom our workforce to be there, to be prepared to receive an industry and grow it? Those are all things that the Congressman can do, not only passing legislation at the federal level, but using the purse strings of the federal government for the 9th District. So a livable wage for me is not what can you get by on, but what can you really live a full life off of? And I think it's something more than $15 an hour. We need to set a floor, but my goal for the 9th District is to be better than that floor. We got to be better than that.
I want to make sure I understand it. So when you say, what you're talking about when you say livable wages is you're meaning having something left over that you could actually save to be able to, to have a safety net, put some additional in retirement, or start a retirement account if you haven't done so. Are you talking about, is that how the calculation is done? And give me some insight on that. Is that what you mean? Or?
Yeah, no, I think that's important, but I would also say, most Americans don't have $5 to $100 in saving to deal with a tragedy, right? And so what happens is, you have a situation where I talked to a poll worker the other day, whose license is suspended. And let's look at this. And so I actually not a poll worker, but somebody else working at the polls. She saw a car accident where a truck moves a car off the road and basically runs over it. The police are coming. This person is concerned, the one who got the car ran over. Why? Because they were going to and from work with their family to pick their family up after work, but they don't have insurance and they don't have a license. Why don't they have a license? Because they got a ticket and they couldn't pay the ticket on time, right? And so having enough money that if I get a speeding ticket, I can pay $200, not ideal, but you need to have that much money, because if you don't pay it, your license gets suspended, you don't have insurance. And now these catastrophic things start cascading. Poverty is very, very expensive, right? Got to take a pay, anything you're doing around it, a medical bill, whatever, it hits people differently. And so if you don't have enough resources to be able to cover and do those things, it could have catastrophic and long-lasting influence, like impact on your family. And so if we're paying people just enough to get by, to never make a mistake, I saw it would take like 20 years of no mistakes for someone to get out of poverty. Because any mistake, a traffic ticket, I broke my ankle on a slip and fall, whatever, my kid got in trouble at school and did some property damage, whatever, will set you back because you got to borrow and you're in debt and your credit card and whatever it may be. And so we can't continue to do that. And I think that case is being made well by a lot of congressmen. There's a good video of Katie Porter asking Mr. Wells, the CEO of Wells Fargo, how one of his bank tellers in California could get by on what they pay them, because everything costs more than, right? And so again, we have this thing that says we want people to just to get by, and the rich have gotten richer and the poor get poorer. And so we need to be really intentional about ensuring that we pay people enough to where they're not enslaved to the system, and that they can actually provide meaningful opportunities and have some level of security with them and their families.
Well, I have a sub question, and I'm going to put up another topic where we can talk about it. But first, before we get to this, we know that on July 31st, the pandemic unemployment assistance that was provided under the CARES Act stops. And, there are 1,000 articles by now that talk about the extreme negative impact that's going to have on our economy, not to mention on people who have mortgages that they won't be able to pay, and the list just goes on.
Sure.
What do you think about that? Do you feel like our government is going to make the right decision and try to remedy that situation, especially since coronavirus now is worse than it was at the time that it was first approved?
I think the reality is this, and I think Democrats and Republicans understand this. If they don't pass another bill that gives people relief, the amount of civil unrest that will occur in this country will be more than the system can actually. There's already unrest with teachers going back to school. There's already much needed unrest due to our country's history in as far as criminal justice interacting with Black people and just racial issues, period. If you really want to light it off, let a bunch of people get evicted and put on the streets. At a point, and that's something I learned in the military, the enemy you don't want is the one that has nothing to lose. You start kicking a million people out on the street, don't give them enough money to feed themselves, and you evict them from their homes and allow that to occur. The reality is there'll be civil unrest. I think they're going to do something because they understand, the posture we're at as a country. And so, yeah, that's part of that -1 response that we've had as a country. And we got to do something about that, and we got to take it seriously. But I think the conversation that you're starting to hear happen is on both sides of the aisle, they understand how important it is. You see that the GOP even broke from the president on what they would present in that bill. They took the payroll part of it out because they realized we got to do something. So I think you'll see something very soon on that in that regard.
And also, I think one of the unique things that have happened in District 9 is, we have a strong labor force in terms of what we could say, in the distribution, in the area of distribution. So we have a lot of warehouse people who work through warehouses and stuff. And with that, and I've been through this system before. Sometimes you have to go through a temp agency to get to the employment at the warehouse. And man, I've seen it with my own eyes, situations where I just eyeballing it, felt like at least half or more of the workforce was through the temp service, where healthcare, if you get it through, say, like a CMOS, the cost of
your contractor. You're a contractor.
Yeah,
you're a contractor. Yes.
And so, what about economic growth in District 9? And keeping in mind that kind of situation, and I know we can't talk about economics without talking about jobs. So, what are your thoughts on?
Yeah, this is more than a minute and a half. I talked to my father. My father works for American Building Management, and they manage some of these warehousing facilities. And one of the things that we've talked about was when they have a sort shift at a lot of these facilities, the sort shift is designed around a 4-hour block. That block actually does not always last 4 hours. So while you may get paid $15 an hour, it is not guaranteed you will work 4 hours during that shift. In addition, it's not like shift work somewhere else. The next shift does not immediately follow your 4-hour shift. There is a break in time. So in a day, to get 8 hours in, you got to be there for more than 8 hours, right? Just to get 8 hours in. In addition, for each shift, they invite far more people than they need to actually work the shift because they know only a certain amount of people will show up. That is how temporary the mindset of the workers are that work in a lot of these facilities, and how it works with the temporary services, that they are literally just a commodity that's being moved through, right? And the temp agency should tell you everything is, we're going to save every dime we can, period. And so when you live in a right to work state where, unions are discouraged or they're doing everything they can to bust unions, and you have an economy that is based off of temporary workers, and if they don't find them here, they go to Mississippi and Arkansas and they'll bust them in to replace our own workers in the 9th district. And they even went a step further. Amazon's next facility, for instance, is built in Mississippi, right? Google, same thing, right? And so we cannot compete as a city, and our economy cannot be healthy as long as it is based on low wage jobs. Too many of our jobs and too much of our economy is based off of paying people low wages. Memphis will not be able to compete. There was a day and age where our peer cities were cities like Atlanta or Nashville or Charlotte. Now our peer cities are Little Rock and Birmingham and Indianapolis. There's no set of circumstances that Memphis should ever be competing with Little Rock and Birmingham. But because we have committed to this very, very insular, low-wage economy, or we're not paying people well, and we're not really growing, we're not being competitive, that has allowed other cities to catch up to us. And so when we talk about economic growth in the 9th district, we have to have the industry that demands jobs, meaningful jobs that pay well. And we either have to organically grow and support people here. That's like a lot of entrepreneurial efforts here, like StartCode, that are investing in like biotech and other firms like that. Invest in one of those and grow them, and or attract other growing, burgeoning industries and make Memphis. DevCon just moved here. They do network security. That could be a place where Memphis, at least in the Southeast, becomes a leader. But you only do that by saying, we commit to this industry. We actually want people trained to those jobs. And guess what happens? If you said tomorrow, network security is going to be Memphis's thing and we're getting in it and we're going to hire 150,000 people in that over the next decade, guess what happens? You then say to Shelby County Schools and you say to Rhodes and you say to Christian Brothers and Southwest and University of Memphis, I need you to give me graduates who can do this. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Those companies then invest. FedEx, they wanted people working in logistics and operational security. What do? Build a FedEx Center of Technology on the campus and created a major. That's how it works. And so now high school kids will go to that. They see this pretty building and they say, I could work for FedEx. This looks great. I'm going to focus in school because I know there's a job out there for me and I can come here and be in this pretty building. And they go to that building, they get trained and they go work in that industry. We don't have an industry that has that demand signal in our colleges or our K through 12 space. And that takes a sincere commitment. And so me as congressman, I want to push our mayors, push our chamber, push our state reps and push those. What are we doing in Memphis to actually take advantage of our incredible talent, human capital, and workforce? And what are we doing to bring jobs here that people can actually live off of instead of just getting by on moving somebody else's stuff? We have to turn our economy and the people in our economy into makers. Right now, we're just movers. We move other people's stuff. We need to start making something meaningful, a service or a product that can make us competitive going forward.
Well, we know in Memphis, we are a majority Black city. And so what do you think, when you consider businesses in Memphis and Shelby County, definitely we don't have more Black businesses, or at least the majority of businesses are not Black-owned businesses in Shelby County and Memphis. What are your thoughts on Black business growth?
So the Memphis Business Journal did a great expose on this, and Memphis is not unique, but it is particularly acute, the issues we have with Black businesses here. So I believe in the article that I read that there are 12 times more Black businesses, more white businesses than Black businesses in Memphis. Memphis is 2 of every 3 people in Memphis is Black. 12 times more white businesses than Black businesses, right? Those businesses hire 16 times more people than Black businesses. White businesses have 16 times more employees than, and they bring in 42 times more revenue. So for every dollar a Black business makes, white businesses make $42. For every employee that a Black business has, there are 16 employees at a white business. And for every Black business, there are 12 white businesses, right? And so I'm seeing in these groups, these restaurant groups, like people supporting Black business right now, which I think is great, right? But you can make one chart with all the Black restaurants. You can't do that with the other ones, right? And so guess what those Black restaurants do? They hire Black people and pay them a wage and provide their families. And not just, but restaurants, that's low end of the totem pole, right? Tech businesses and businesses with large employees, if you look at most of the receipts that our government gives to Black businesses, it's the businesses with 1, 2, or 3 employees, right? So we're not construction companies, we're not architectural firms, we're not building and growing, we're not outfitting, and we are just a marketing professional or a lawyer or something like that. And those are great and fine and good, but if we're not investing in businesses that create opportunities in the community, where I got the contract, where I pay 20 people to work on this job site and I provide for their families, we're doing the wrong thing. And so one of the things that I think is important is we've had some federal dollars to come into Memphis here over the past few years. One the congressman likes to talk about, like $74 million on the Lamar expansion, like to drive more logistics trucks in and out of the district. My argument is if we're going to invest in the district and bring money in, it needs to be in a community that can see it and not, some road down at the end of Lamar going in Mississippi. But if we're going to do that, how much of that $74 million went to a Black contractor, right? Like that's a place that you can meaningfully make change. Like I'm going to bring a federal grant program here, and I'm going to make sure a community that needs it to create jobs, needs to create, to grow and be able to compete for more contracts. I'm going to make sure that money goes to a Black business and helps them grow. Atlanta grew off the Hartsville Airport project, and many Black businesses participated in that, and they almost had 40% of that. That created developers, that created a number of skilled labor that lasted, for decades. We can do the same here, but we need to have leaders that understand it ain't voting in Congress. It's how do I make sure money comes here, gets in the hands of the people that need it. And if Black Lives Matter, they got to matter in our economy. And that's the difference you'll see between me and the congressman is I'm fighting to make sure I put money in people's pockets and I grow capacity. And the way you do that to create a middle class, another way you do that is growing Black businesses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me ask you a question that's sort of, it's a new industry in America that, I guess maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we probably never would have imagined that this would be an industry. But what do you think about the legalization of marijuana in states who have created a new industry that is changing the game as it comes to revenue? For Tennessee, what do you think about legalization of marijuana?
So we are kind of behind the times on this, and I think it's important to look at the data. And there's a lot of people that are afraid of marijuana. My grandma, you be out there smoking them reefers. You can't be out there, with them reefers. So, and I understand it. It's a controlled substance. I got it. Understand it. But alcohol is far more damaging, right? Like damaging the family. Alcoholism as a disease is far more damaging, and it's legal, right? So I support legalizing marijuana. I support it being regulated properly. But I think what's most important is we started a war on drugs in this country circa the late 70s, early 80s, where we incarcerated tens of millions of people, particularly black men, black and brown men. And we devastated those communities, right? Today, 20,000 men are missing from the economy of Memphis. Also, Memphis Business Journal point, where are they at? Probably with a felony and can't be employed. That's probably where they are, right? And so there has to be a restorative piece to any legislation that legalizes marijuana that gives access to capital for Black people to participate in that business, because I think that is something that our country owes to a community that they heavily policed and incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. And if we're going to say it's legal now, there's some penance that we need to pay to those who were swept on it, and to those communities who were swept under by it. But you look at it right now, it is very hard for Blacks to get access to capital in that particular business. I know some veterans, for instance, a veteran woman who got into it in Colorado, and she's like one of two in the state. And it's already kind of running away. And so I think the federal government can do a lot to restore that and right that wrong that they've committed in waging the war on drugs on one of its own communities.
And I think a lot more attention might need to be placed, or should be placed on felons who have lost their right to vote.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes.
Yeah. And so we're going to gear up now for our big one. This is our big question, and this is, I guess, the broadest question that we're going to ask, and it's a SWOT analysis. And we want you to look at District 9. And I know it's hard to just look at District 9 in a vacuum, but to the extent possible, look at District 9 and tell us what you think the greatest strength of District 9 is, what do you see as the greatest weakness, our biggest opportunity, and then definitely what is the single greatest threat to us moving from where we are today to where we can be tomorrow.
So we have so many strengths, our geography, our water, kind of where we are in the country, our history and things like that. The strength of District 9 is its people, right? People, wrote that music and created that music. They made that food. They ran those businesses, and they continue to be special, right? My friend hit me up from California yesterday, and she sent me a video of the young lady who won the singing show. It was a young lady from Memphis, and she was like, "Is everybody in Memphis like this?" I'm like, "Yeah." We go to church in Memphis any Sunday, and everybody sing like that. Everybody's funny. Like everybody has, there's something in the water here. And so I think our strength is our people. But one of our weaknesses is recognizing that and a willingness to put that face forward. And I'll be honest, Memphis has struggled with being able to have Black faces represented meaningfully, right? Whether it's Elvis in the music industry, with the businesses we invest in and how we do things, we've struggled with that kind of mightily. And so one of our weaknesses is we don't recognize the things that make us strong, or we're not willing necessarily to invest in those opportunities. Because Memphis does not have a resident business here, that's kind of like the big, we actually have the opportunity to present ourselves as kind of a canvas to anyone, right? And so if you think about like electric cars, right? Right now, America's taking a lead on the rest of the world, but Europe wants to catch up, Asia wants to catch up. What would it look like if Memphis said to Asia and Europe, "Hey, you want to build components for your electric car? Memphis is the place to be," right? Think about green technologies and things like that. Like, again, Memphis has a university system and a lot of space think Chelsea Corridor, think of Fraser, think of South Memphis, think of Hickory Hill, many places where you can build a lot of space infrastructure to build it in. But the opportunity is we don't have one that's competitive. So anybody could come here and kind of make it in their image and really grow up Memphis pretty quickly and scale it pretty quickly because the opportunity with the space and the lack of kind of a competitive business and industry exists. But I think the threat is everybody is trying to improve who they are, and no one is trying to do it on the low wage end, right? Birmingham is growing industry. Little Rock is doing it. You saw Nashville has really exploded over the past 10 or 15 years. And the threat to us is we are not playing the same game other people are playing. And so as long as when there is other areas around us are attracting these business and industry and growing technologically for the future, the longer that we don't do it, the more it is a threat to us as a city, and we will fall further and further behind. And so again, like if we invest in our people and understand that we're a sleeping giant and we are positioned and poised with the transportation infrastructure and where we sit in the country with an incredible logistics industry that can be supportive of anyone else and moving their products around the world, and a workforce that really is kind of a blank slate ready to be trained into whatever it is. We have an incredible opportunity there, and then the strength is our people. But we have to get out of the mindset of let's do it the cheapest way we could possibly do it and get into the mindset of what's the best, right? Cheaper, faster, or better. And our mindset has to be better. Like what can we make better than other people? When we've been successful, it's because we were better at moving products, not cheaper. FedEx is not cheaper than the post office, but it was better. AutoZone was better. We brought something to you. Piggly Wiggly was better. It was a grocery store. It's better than hotels. We were better than. That has been when we have really, really taken off as a city is because we did something better than, not cheaper than. And so I think we have to commit to those ideas and do things better. And that's how Memphis really, meets its promise.
Man, extraordinary answer to that question, and I think voters have gotten quite an earful. And if you're watching, definitely, I hope you're taking notes and making yourself a chart and list that you can use to help inform your decision at the polls, so you can make a better decision. And Corey, we thank you for coming. We're going to give you an opportunity to do the last word. And so I'm going to give a little information to the voters, and then we'll come back to you to give the last word.
Sure.
So if you want to learn more about Corey Strong, make sure you visit his website at www.the901strong.com. And you can take the 901strong.com and pretty much put it behind any of your social media sites and pull them up. So the same would be the case for Facebook. It's www.facebook.com/the901strong. You can do that on Twitter and find his account there.
Not .com, just the901strong. But yeah, that's fine. But just /the901strong for all of them.
So for Twitter, I'll correct it for you guys. So on LinkedIn, is that the right one for LinkedIn?
No, it's for Instagram. So mine is my name, Corey Strong, on LinkedIn, but yes.
Okay, gotcha. So on LinkedIn, you can find him by just searching Corey Strong, and then on Twitter, it would be the901
Strong.
Gotcha.
Yep, the901 Strong. Yep, on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the901 Strong.
Gotcha. Well, let me say this, voters. Look, everyone can make a difference, and one vote can be the difference. We've got to be responsible as voters and fulfill our obligation to choose leaders to make decisions on our behalf, and the kind of leaders that will ask us how we feel about what's happening in the community and keep us connected, because information is critically important, especially in times where change is rampant and unexpected. I don't think any of us had plans to be quarantined for as long as we have been dealing with that. And while America is now asking us to wear a mask, we have people in America telling America to take off the masks of racism. So in light of all of these changes, let's not forget to vote, because that is where the fight must happen if we want leaders who are as about the change as we feel about it. Okay. I also want to give a reminder that voting isn't the only thing that's on the table and that's important. We've got to complete the census, everyone. The census is important because it makes sure, by completing it, we ensure that our district lines are drawn fairly and that all of the resources that can be allocated to Tennessee and sent through Shelby County actually makes it to the communities that need it most. And lastly, I'm going to say one more thing about voting. Remember that the deadline to request your absentee ballot is July 30th. If you have already requested your ballot and you haven't received it, make sure you call the Election Commission, make sure you email them, and do whatever it takes to get that ballot. And if for whatever reason you get the absentee ballot and you still decide to go vote, or if you don't get it in the mail and you decide to go vote, understand that you can vote, but it will be by provisional ballot, and your vote may or may not be counted. So, Mr. 901 Strong, Corey Strong, go ahead and tell the people why they should be voting for you and close us out.
So I have, thank you again for the opportunity, Michael, and great discussion on these issues. I'm running for one reason. I've had a life of service and I want to continue to serve my community in a meaningful way. But I want to serve it with an asset mindset of what is possible here, right? Not to be afraid of who the president is or who the party is or just what's going on, but to walk in a way that provides promise to our children, to our community, and to work to invest in the parts of the community that really, really need it, right? And so I've seen that, and I've seen what's possible in Memphis when we invest in people. I've seen what's possible when there are leaders who work every day to make sure that people have meaningful opportunities, and I want to be that person. I understand we've been with one congressman for some period of time, but what I can tell you is the change in the community is not evident. And so I want you to elect someone who to vote for me. I ask you humbly for your vote because it is important that you have a leader that you can judge based off of what they've done. And I want you to judge me on the work that I've done to bring more jobs and more opportunities to the 9th District. Federal funding, ambassador for the district, or legislation, however and ever, whatever I do is to bring more things back to the 9th District so I can see Memphis and the 9th District reach their promise. And so have somebody that's voting to put more money in your pocket. My job is to secure the bag for the 9th District. That's what I'm trying to do, trying to secure that bag. And that's why I want you to vote as someone who's focused on that one thing, because I believe our communities will flourish if they're given the opportunity, if given all the opportunity they deserve.
All right. You have heard it from the man himself, Mr. Corey Strong. So thank you so much for being with us on today. And we wish you continued success and forward momentum as you continue campaigning on through Election Day. And so we look forward to seeing great things from you in the future. And thank you again for being our very special guest.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate it.
Very well.